55. There are mild roadwork slowdowns again this morning. Northbound River Road to Blodgett, southbound Arsenal to River Road. The other expressways and tollways look good. Then Chicago authorities have closed access to the Lakefront Trail between Fullerton and Navy Pier. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. In our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center, cloudy, a bit of rain this afternoon. High of 52. Currently, we have 48. Next news at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Kevin Williamson, writing over at National Review. If you want to know why people are so vulnerable to conspiracy theories and to misinformation, it is in part because they believe that they are being lied to by those with whom they have entrusted great power, that the truth is being kept from them by design. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good diagnosis. I'm not much one to traffic in conspiracy theories, but I understand what Kevin Williamson is pointing to. And I think to some extent you've seen it on display by politicians at both the federal and state and local levels during this crisis. People show you who they are in a crisis. You've certainly seen allegations of self-dealing, which don't, and insider trading, which don't inspire a lot of confidence. And I'm talking about mainly North Carolina Republican Senator Richard Burr, who has yet to give a compelling accounting of the decisions he made on stock sales.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
And perhaps others as well, including Dianne Feinstein. You know, the fact that her husband makes the decisions is not enough separation. It's one thing to have a blind trust and you have an independent financial advisor making decisions, as is the case was Kelly Loeffler in Georgia. It's another thing if you have an arm's length a financial advisor who's your spouse. But so all that stuff doesn't inspire confidence. The moral preening, the money grab, everything is necessary, and don't worry about the precedents we're setting, and don't worry about the consequences of these sorts of government interventions in our economy, and don't worry about shutting down the economy. As our discussion with Rusty Reno from First Things yesterday, we're used to government accidentally wrecking the economy. We're not used to doing it on purpose as an actual policy goal. So you can understand why some people are skeptical, not necessarily fuming, uncertain, but skeptical, and want a full accounting and the thinking behind the decisions that are being made, rather than just putting it under anything under the banner of disaster relief or stimulus is automatically a good and shall not be questioned. And that certainly goes with respect to $150 billion worth of the $2 trillion disaster relief package that passed the Senate 96-0 yesterday. And our friend Steve Malagna has written on the topic, or certainly the topic by extension, the crisis's impact on state and local budgets, particularly state budgets, and particularly those states that were the worst governed going into this crisis, like the one we live in here in Illinois, and most of our listeners, although Wisconsin and Indiana, Iowa listeners are faring much better. But anyway, on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Steve Malagna, contributing editor to City Journal, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, is not happy that he's only scheduled to get $4 billion from the federal government. He needs much more. And he's not wrong, but it has something to do with the COVID-19 response and a lot to do with policy making in New York for generations preceding the pandemic.
Yeah, well, first of all, the thing about Cuomo is he's looking at sort of direct aid for his budget. I think it was Senator Schumer who pointed out today, when you start counting the specific ways that the federal government is going to help the states, the additional Medicaid money, which is a big part of obviously this whole problem, also the money for unemployment insurance because their unemployment claims are soaring. The amount of money that New York is scheduled to get. He said it's more like $60 billion. This goes to the heart of a larger issue. If you go back to the 2009 stimulus, you remember that. In that, the states essentially wanted money, basically just, like, Pritzker out in Illinois is saying we want block grants.
Right.
But the federal government, and especially federal representatives from states that have not misgoverned themselves, that don't have huge pension debts and stuff, they are not about to let a recession or a crisis like this be used for money for those problems. That's what you're going to see. That's why you're seeing targeted money. We have a healthcare problem. We have we're going to send you money for Medicaid. We have an unemployment problem. We're going to bolster your unemployment insurance. But we're not going to give you money to fix your pension problem, which was making your budget a mess even before this. And that's, I think, part of the message of what's really going on here.
Well, how do they decide how much money each state receives?
Well, a lot of it now is just portioned based on past experience. The size of the state. This is why the census is so important. The size of the state, the amount of money based, for instance, let's say unemployment insurance that the states needed in previous recessions. So, the decisions, when you're talking about individual programs, we have a history of how much each state spends in those programs, how much they're allowed to spend. And so that can be targeted. A lot of these, what the states are looking for now is just money to replace lost tax revenues. And the question is going to be, does the federal government give people just general money for their budget? Because general money for their budget is going to basically go to help paper over the problems that the states themselves have created.
Yeah, and your point about New York, the aid they're getting in all kinds of other ways is a salient one, and also including New York, California, Washington State, the National Guard that's been scrambled, the federal government, meaning everybody else is picking up that tab too. Don't forget that. I'm sure Andrew Cuomo is not counting that in his calculation in terms of what he's getting versus what he wants. The other thing that you addressed too, this is really salient for Illinois with a graduated state income tax proposal on the ballot in November, is those states that are in particularly precarious positions, even more so than their spending side or unfunded liabilities would indicate, are those states that are heavily reliant on high income tax earners, heavily reliant on high earners that pay a majority of their income taxes because they're over-reliant on income taxes, places like California and New York.
Not just income taxes, but income taxes on the rich. You see, this is a change over the last 50 years as the income tax became more and more progressive over time. As it became more and more progressive, state income taxes have become more volatile, meaning in a recession, you see actual tremendous dips in the amount of money that government collects because we're relying on people who, for instance, most high earners, people earning over $1 million, it's estimated that about a quarter of their income comes from the stock market, capital gains. Well, guess what? When the stock market is down 25%, there are no capital gains. Those capital gains are all gone. So you see in places like California after the last recession in 2009, their income tax collections in 1 year declined by $7 billion. States are not in a position to deal with those kinds of drops in income from year to year because they have to continue giving services. Volatility is really the enemy of state governments and city governments, but that's the model that they've constructed now. And, every recession that we've had, especially the last three, they have all been accompanied by these enormous drops in the stock market. And you see states going from, having money in the bank to basically, being impoverished again. And that is one of the real dangers of an increasingly progressive tax system.
So help me out here. So yesterday, they offered help, federal assistance for small businesses, but Governor Pritzker is offering 3-month loan deferrals for small businesses or 6 months of interest-only payments. So are they being helped twice, or how is this going to work?
Well, I'm not familiar with the governor's latest proposal. Deferrals from loans from who? Who are they not paying their loans back to? They're regular borrowers or or from the government loans.
That's the thing. I don't know. And he
Yeah,
didn't specify
yeah.
that
I mean,
yesterday.
yeah,
But he
there are
just said that
places.
that's what he's going to offer small businesses in
Yeah,
Illinois.
I assume it's basically through the Small Business Administration in Washington, because you can't. No governor has the power to direct, let's say, your mortgage company to say,
Right.
you know, you right. So I assume they're going to do that. And you know, part of the problem here is that will work up to a point, but we don't have the administrative capability right now. Those loans are really diminutive. You know, we have, literally hundreds of thousands of small businesses in a state like Illinois. And so we can't really reach out to those people. And that's one of the reasons why there are so many people now saying you have to look at the larger cost of these shutdowns. And, you know, and Pritzker is one of those people who's in the camp just saying, you know, don't bother, don't pressure me, you know, to get the economy going again. We'll deal with that later. But there are other experts now, and a lot of people are just saying this is Trump versus the experts. But it's not Trump. There are a lot of medical experts who are pointing out that there are human problems with economic decline, including a lot of these small businesses. You know, we're talking about how the economy is going to jump right back after this is over with. But if businesses become bankrupt and just go out of business, it's not going to jump right back, obviously. So that's the debate that we're now having. And it's very difficult for government right now, especially state government. It just doesn't have the administrative capability to reach out to the hundreds of thousands of small businesses that are out there to, you know, analyze which of them really need the help and get them that money. First of all, that much money just doesn't exist right now. The American economy basically generates more than $1 trillion of gross domestic product every month. So that's a lot of money. So it just doesn't exist, that money.
There's a suggestion that already that even before this passes the House that there may be another disaster relief package coming in the next month or two, depending on how things proceed. And you can be sure that the state governments will be back with their tin cups, and will be specifically for the $1.5 trillion in unfunded pension liabilities and post-employment benefits that exist in the nation. And Illinois, of course, is the worst example in the nation on that front. Talk to us about the hammering on Wall Street and the shutting down of economies in places like Illinois and New York and Connecticut, and what that means for those public sector pension funds.
Well, first of all, you know, one of the biggest problems that we face, and I've been shouting this for 10 years, is that, you know, we've gone through the 11-year bull market, and yet pension funds never recovered. So the pension funds were like almost 90% funded in 2007 before the great fall off. They slumped tremendously. But then we went through an 11-year bull market where we know what the market was like, right? We know how much it increased, 300%, you know, comeback. And yet the most the pension funds ever reached in that period was 75% funding. So they were 12 to 15% below what they had been in 2007, even though we had an 11-year bull market. What I've been saying again and again is that people don't understand the accounting in these pension systems, and now we're seeing the result of that. And basically, the simplest way to explain it is so much of the money that we're promising to these public sector employees is supposed to come from investment returns in the stock market. When you have a tremendous decline like this, so much money disappears that's supposed to be earning investment returns every day that there's no way for the system to catch up, especially because you have public workers going to work every day earning new pension credits. So we keep falling further and further behind. It's the equivalent of one step forward, two steps back. And right now, we were at a point where we were 72% funded. That's all we were going into this after 11 years. Now you're going to see a whole bunch of states going into the 60s and 50% funded, and you're going to see places like New Jersey and Illinois that were under 40% funded. They're going to be going back to 30%. If you start looking at what that means in terms of the amount of money in these funds, the amount that's going out every year to pay pension benefits to people, right, we're actually draining these funds. These funds are essentially on a path to insolvency, and it's just a question of how many cycles it's going to take for that to happen. Because with each cycle, we're depleting the assets in the funds, and we're still paying out enormous amounts of money because many places like Illinois have not been able to change their pension benefits.
And how about, say, Chicago, where going into this, the police and fire pension funds were less than 25% funded.
Exactly. If you just go and look, I mean, I haven't looked at Chicago in terms of what they call cash flow, but I was looking at another state, New Jersey, yesterday. They have a teachers' pension fund that has about $25 billion in it. It, too, is only 25% funded. After this drop-off, we have almost a 25% drop-off in the, it's likely that fund has somewhere around the area of $18 billion in it. But they're sending out in New Jersey like $3.5 billion a year just in pension benefits to people, just in pension benefits. So, you're looking at this depletion level. And after 2009, there were a number of people experts who did these depletion run out. How long is it going to take for this stuff to run out? And the reason the money didn't run out in some of these places, and Illinois, New Jersey, and Kentucky were the three that people looked at the most, the reason it didn't is because we had an 11-year bull market. But the point is, with every cycle, we never recover completely. New Jersey and Illinois never got above 50% funding in the longest bull market in American history. So you really, it's a crisis situation. But I'm telling you something else because I remember this from 2009. There are representatives from around the country, Democrats, Republicans, doesn't matter, from other states that don't have this problem, and they said back then, I cannot vote to fix this problem because my constituents will say, we didn't make this mess for ourselves. Why should we pay for other people?
That's right. And you know what? They shouldn't. I agree with them as an Illinoisan. He is Steve Malagna. He is the contributing editor of the City Journal, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Steve, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Chicago hotels being used to quarantine virus patients. Mortgage applications last week plunged by 30%. And Target puts remodeling plans on hold. Those stories next.
The coronavirus is wreaking havoc here in the United States and across the globe. The stock market is plummeting. Sports leagues are suspending their seasons. Schools are sending students home, and the entire U.S. economy has been destabilized. Many experts say this is just the beginning. This is a devastating risk if you're heavy in stocks with no safeguard. Wise investors know to hedge against stock market collapse by utilizing physical precious metals. Noble Gold is a leader in this conservative financial strategy, offering extensive education, patient counsel, and expert guidance by phone. We've helped many first-time investors move their IRAs into gold using our easy 3-step process. There is no time to